Hello and welcome to The Andyplex, the podcast where we talk about movies with creatives. This is episode 29, Podcasts in a Half Shell. Joining me today to talk about the 1990 action, crime, comedy, sci-fi is film producer and dear old pal of mine, Richard Wallace King. Welcome, Rich.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Teenage Mutant Ninja... Wow, Rich. So good to have you. We've been building up to this for, years.
Long time.
We've been roommates together now multiple times in multiple cities.
Time zones as well, yeah.
Which is crazy. And also cool. We get along. And we're still friends.
Yeah.
We still seek each other's company. And we made it this far, so I think we're lifers.
This has been half my life so far, so.
Yes, we met in 2004. We talk about this in our King of Producing episode, where Rich King is a producer. And I believe I'll be putting that one first or second. So this will either be after you heard that one or before. So that covers the bases.
The options are basically limitless as long as it's those two.
Exactly. Well, anyway, I went and saw the new Turtles movie, which just opened. It's going into its second weekend. Had a domestic cume of $28 million, which is good at its budget category. It's going into its second weekend. We'll see how things are doing. And I came home and watched the 1990 classic, which I saw in 1990 in the theater, and I believe it was the second movie I saw in the theater that I remember, and I think maybe total. I remember seeing Little Mermaid,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember buying the tape in the gift shop of the soundtrack.
Yeah.
And listening to it in the car for years. If Dad's picking us up, that's blasting.
Nice.
The whole way. And then this movie. Although I believe I also saw Dick Tracy. So I remember seeing that in the theater, and it scared me.
I think that was also 1990, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was 1990, so shoot. Which one was first? Anyway, it was one of my first formative experiences, and I remember basically my brother and I, who was 4 at the time, Gianni, and I was 6, being asked, do we want to see Back to the Future 3 or Turtles? And we were like, Turtles! I don't remember if we had already been watching the show. I feel like maybe we already had been watching the show, but it was an easy call for us. But then later became Back to the Future fans down the road. Although seeing 3 first might have been weird. Although it's a Western and kind of on its own hind legs. Well, I reached out to you and was like, dude, we got to do the episode. And I thought of you seeing Turtles because I know you're a big fan. And then you said, let's do it. And here we are. So pumped. What was your first exposure to this cinematic masterpiece?
So I don't have a memory of seeing it in the theater, so I'm pretty sure the first time I saw it would have been on the VHS tape, which I did some research, came out in like October or September, which seems pretty quick for a VHS release back in that time, like to be in the theaters in March and then have a VHS turned around within 6 months. I probably got the tape for Christmas and then probably watched it nonstop for several months. Like, would watch it in my parents' bedroom and would use their king-size bed to jump up and do kicks and flips and all that kind of stuff. Like, really, really enjoyed it. I was also a big fan of I was a fan of the cartoon show, which they started in '87. So I would have seen that. It would have been five or six by the time I saw that. I don't know. I was a fan of everything Turtles. It was kooky. It was wild. It was wacky. So that was kind of like, yeah. But I was a diehard. And then loved the second movie as well. I don't
Secret of the Ooze.
Secret of the Ooze. I don't remember being a fan of the third one.
Yeah, same. I saw it years later, but I don't remember. Like, I watched 1 and 2 a lot.
Yeah. 1 and 2 were on. I mean, through college. Like, I was watching on. I had an old CRT and television with a built-in VHS player, and I would watch my tapes from when I was, I still have the original tapes that I got. I still have those.
Yes, Rich actually brought his VHS player, and we were trying to hook it up into my projector, and we got the audio to play, but we couldn't, for whatever reason, figure out the visual. But we were sitting here, and we took a little break, and we ate a Domino's pizza, which is very fitting. And there's Domino's throughout the piece.
That's right.
Although later, I guess, Pizza Hut did a campaign.
The product tie-in was through Pizza Hut, even though the product placement in the movie was Domino's.
Right, so there you go. I did the same thing the other day when I watched the new one, and just watching them eat the pizza in the movie, even if it was animated pizza,
Sure.
I wanted it so badly.
Yep.
And then got a Domino's pizza and wolfed it down. Got a pan and just ate the entire thing in one go, which I rarely do, even with a pan. It's not quite a large, but the pans, they're the deep dish. It's thick. There's a deal at Domino's for 5 toppings, one being extra cheese. Oh my God, it might have been the best pizza yet.
Yeah.
We just had a Brooklyn style, but there was a deal for the pan. I feel like a pan's not quite big enough for 2 people that are really hungry. Maybe if like moderately hungry, we could do it. But like I said, I literally ate the whole thing myself the other day. So I wanted to provide for us to fuel our podcasting endeavor.
Here it is.
So I wanted to get an extra large. It was a deal. But yeah, it was a pan pizza, well done, and extra cheese, onions, sausage, pepperoni, and green pepper. Or jalapeno pepper. And my God, it was so good. It was so good. And then was watching, basically only made it through the opening of the 1991 before I finished it. It was like, oh, I'll eat pizza throughout the whole movie. I was like the opening credits. And then, with the part where they're going down the sewer. And next thing I know, the pizza's gone. But it was so nice to have it while they had it. And they talked about it. And there's references. I'm not sure how the pizza thing came about. Do you know?
I think it was added for the TV show, for the cartoon.
Okay.
I don't know why.
As the kind of thing they were. Well, I know they're teenagers. They're teen.
Yes.
It's the T. It's the first word in the quartet of the 4 words. So I think maybe that was something they could channel to give them a teenager-y thing.
I guess so, but they definitely feel like young teenagers, right? They feel like 13.
Yeah. They just barely.
Like they just became teenagers.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this. I don't know.
They're not 19, like waiting to be 20.
No, definitely not. We can't vote. I can't drive. Like none of that.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm sure that I liked pizza as a young child, but I feel like whatever massive obsession I would later gain for pizza probably derived from the Turtles. I don't.
Yeah. It's a thing.
Yeah, it absolutely was a thing. And especially like in the second movie, which we're not talking about today, the whole opening credits is just people eating pizza, just like giant slices, New York slices, and like everyone's eating pizza.
Yeah, gotta watch 2 soon. It's been a minute.
That ooze, man, there's a secret.
That's the secret. Yeah, and it's the pizza. The ooze is the cheese. It's a double entendre. You see.
Yeah, that I was watching some video in preparation for this and found out that original theme song, that Teenage Mutant, was written by Chuck Lorre, 2.5 Men and Big Bang Theory.
Yeah. I guess he was a musician for a while.
Yeah, he was like not traveling. He was like a busking musician, like looking to sell his musical wares.
Yeah,
and that was one of the things he got hired to do.
It's crazy. That's a fact, Jack.
Yeah. And that's actually his voice.
All the little like one-liners. Yeah. Yes, actually, you turned me onto it. I just watched it today. It's
The Toys That Made Us.
The Toys That Made Us. I believe it's season 3, episode 1. And now I got to watch them all. That was the only one I'd seen. I'd seen how. The movies that made us. I've seen that.
Mm-hmm.
It actually really walks you through the franchise as a whole, like Turtles as a brand, as a whole thing. And so yeah, it was really, really good. I wrote some notes. And I didn't know a lot of this stuff. I mean, I knew it was a series before it was a movie. But I mean, I was only 6 when the movie came out, and I must have watched the show before the movie, because I know I was watching a lot of TV back then.
It was just, it was the ubiquity of Saturday morning cartoons. It was on at least once. And it was, it's entertaining. I rewatched it with my nephew several years ago, but it's like, it held his attention, and I mean, it was entertaining. There was nothing spectacular about the animation. It was just like the silliness of it, sort of. Yeah. I don't know. It was very good for a 6-year-old, 7-year-old.
Yeah, no, I watched it over and over. I would be like, oh, this is the Rat King episode. I knew the episode within the first. By the cold open, I could tell what episode it was. And I'd watch it over and over again. Sure, I was watching too much TV probably for a period. I think my parents tried to limit it at one point. We weren't even Catholic or anything, but we did Lent one year, and I could only get 1 hour of TV.
Oof.
And I lied to my friends that the TV was broken or something. I was like, instead of saying that. And then it was one of those things where I got caught in my lie, and I was over at a friend's house, and he was talking about how our TV was broken. And then my brother was like, our TV's not broken. And I was like, oh, my God. And I remember
Gianni!
kind of like a little bit of a liar. Granted, they were white lies, but Johnny, you blew my cover. Darn it. I look terrible in my circle.
That's right. Oh, no.
But yeah, it's so good. And watching it, obviously, you can't help but feel the nostalgia factor, the music, the look of it. But what I was really taken looking at it this time, and I've watched it twice to get ready for today. It's been a couple years since I watched it. And I hadn't watched it on the projector until now. And I caught more. And I just didn't realize kind of how it has this grainy, gritty sliminess to it. And they actually talked about this in the making of documentary that you sent me that's on YouTube. It's about 15 minutes long where they interviewed the actors.
Mm-hmm.
And they talk about how you can't overlight the practical effects that they used because you see the seams and a lot of the movie magic on spools. So they kind of had to keep it all dark. But I think subsequently it gives it this noir, gritty, you think of like Blade Runner. And I remember they talked about it, how it was kind of, the studio was wary about it originally, or Playmates was wary with the movie because it was kind of like, we're going to portray it as grittier and violent and you know, it's certainly not a bloodbath of a movie, but it's kind of rough around the edges, you know.
Yeah, and it's much my understanding. I didn't read the comics, but it's closer in tone to the comics than the TV show was, than the toy line was. I mean, it was the film was actually like a real departure from what had been created from the comic book. It's sort of like this childish thing, and like all of a sudden you have this movie with this really like, you know, high contrast lighting, like in very, you know, moody lighting, and just you know, absolutely. Very serious production design, like great sets.
Amazing.
You know, it works in its favor, and I think it's, you know, it holds up to today. Honestly, like it's probably some of the best. Jim Henson did his studio did all the puppeteering.
So good.
His son was the second unit director.
Oh, is that right? I didn't know.
Brian Henson was the second unit director. So
Brian.
It's just I don't know. Like always be a fan. I've always been a fan of more practical stuff than CGI, and I think, you know,
yes,
this is sort of proving. This movie proves that those things will hold the test of time, whereas CGI will fall apart as the technology grows.
Yes, I think you're right. I know you and I are both horror fans, and there's just a look and feel to the 80s and 90s of the practical, and I think we're starting to see a healthy blend of computer. But I remember there was a period, it seemed like in the late aughts into like even just a few years ago, where it just seemed like it was all CG.
Yeah,
and it just felt so soulless to a degree. Not to say there weren't some great things coming out and good writing, and obviously a movie is many elements that have to weave together in a dance, in a ballet, if you were, of all these things happening. But there is something about this era that I just love. You can see the sweat, and it seems like everyone's sweaty. Now you notice everyone's like been.
It's wet.
Last looks were done and everyone was padded off.
Yeah.
Everything's so wet in the 80s. Call it the slimy 80s, like especially the horror movies, like the Cronenberg era.
Uh-huh.
And seeing this now, it's been a few years, and seeing it now after being such a horror fan and studying horror and like Cronenberg and, you know, all these guys, and seeing the creature work here, when you're a kid, you just think everything's real. You don't really think about it. You're like, oh, that's great production design. As a kid, you're like, oh, pizza, yay. Yeah. You know, or the songs are catchy, or the one-liners. Obviously, that's all still there, but the look of it is so visceral and so good, and you can see the porous sweat on their amphibious skin.
Mm-hmm.
Or reptiles? Reptile?
They're reptiles, yeah.
Yeah, they're reptiles, sorry.
I can't remember who. They were talking to somebody about it and said that this is, you know, we want to be in the POV of the turtles, and this is the life they experience. Mm-hmm. They live, you know, subterranean lives in sewers.
Outcasts.
Yeah, and it's like they come out at night. Like, this is the existence they have, is a very darkened existence. It doesn't, you know, they're not. And really, the only time we see them in the middle of the day is either inside April's apartment or out at the farm. And really, the rest of the time, it's like they are either in a sewer or they are, you know, at nighttime fighting something. You know, they just don't have a lot of daylight exposure. So it makes sense that that's where the movie would want to live.
Right. No, it totally works. Yeah, and I know they kind of took a gamble on. They're like, oh, is this people gonna identify? But I remember as a kid, there was that scariness that I do remember viscerally connecting with, like with Shredder and the Foot Clan, and they're creepy, but then you're like, these guys can combat this force. They have the skills and the wherewithal and the know-withal to combat this evil force, and you really, really feel it. And I remember really being scared of Shredder and being afraid that he was going to kill the redhead, the ginger kid, and just like take his head off. And I was just like, oh my God, he's so scary.
Right.
And then when they're fighting him at the end on the rooftop, it culminates so well, and being so invested. And then I remember after the movie, my parents took us somewhere, and we were in a hotel that night. And they're like, oh, we're going to go to the movies. And then we came back. My brother and I were running around the hallways like on all fours, like we were turtles.
Nice. And
it connected with us at that age. And I don't remember being like, oh, it was dark and gritty and scary, and it was different than the cartoon. It just all fed together in my brain. So I think they succeeded. But you get the lightheartedness of the one-liners, and how they all have their own 4 distinct personalities, and that all really emerged. So there's like something for everyone. Like, what type are you? What turtle do you think you would be, Rich?
As a kid, I was more into it was either Donatello or Michelangelo. Were my two.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I don't know.
Donatello knows machines.
He does. And Michelangelo, he's a party dude. So
yeah, and I remember them saying this in the documentary, the toy documentary, The Toys That Made Us, how he was the kind of avatar of the every teen.
Yeah,
and so that's why he's the most fun, and he's the most like fun and fun-loving, and they all love pizza, but I think he likes it a little bit more.
Yeah,
than they do. Where Leo's like, oh, I got to be the leader, and I gotta make sure I'm doing my part. He wears the burden more.
I was always curious why Michelangelo sounded like a SoCal surfer, and Raphael was like a hardened like Brooklyn guy.
Yeah, live together. That's a really good point. Yeah, that's funny. Oh man, so yeah, you sent me this really cool making of where the actors were. I think it was on the 30th, and they were 3 years ago.
Yeah, 2020 is during COVID. During
COVID, yeah, they were all zooming, and they were like, "Did you think that in 30 years we'd be talking about it?" Like, they're like, "No," but it makes sense that these suits were such a nightmare to be in and be part of.
Oh yeah,
and yeah, apparently they really were. Like one of the actors was like, "Yeah, I just thought I was gonna die like every day." Hot. It's just unbelievably hot, and then the head has all the servos, and it's crazy how the movements, and apparently there was controllers with like certain features would be highlighted or be like mad, smiling, happy. There's like a button you could press, and the face would contort. It's unbelievable.
And then inside the turtle shell was 60 pounds of batteries, wiring, like other controls. So it was just like, you're walking around with a 60-pound pack on your back all the time. And like those are not so they have the suits that the actors would wear, and then they must have had other suits that were just like stunt suits that I'm sure had no controls over it. So if you watch, you can see it especially on Raphael, like when he's fighting the Foot Clan on the rooftop. His mouth is just like in a frozen thing. So his mouth and his eyes and his face don't move at all. It's because it's the stunt suit. And like it's just a guy. The suit is just there to be as lightweight as possible, so he can do the punches and the kicks and exactly. So it's pretty incredible, like what those stunt guys are able to do inside of those massive suits.
I know you forget when you're watching it. It becomes a martial art movie.
Yeah,
where these guys are doing these crazy flips and kicks and punches and they got their weaponry, respective weaponry to the character.
Unless you watch it in the UK, and then they don't. Well, like
oh yeah,
in the UK they were the Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles. Oh, so they took the whole ninja aspect, like went out of it. Apparently that scene, like the nunchuck scene, the show off between the two guys, the one guy that was a fellow chucker, eh? Like that whole scene is just gone. It just doesn't exist. Huh. And then like Michelangelo doesn't have nunchucks. In that movie somehow in the UK version, I don't understand how that's possible, but they like cut out as much as they could so he wouldn't have nunchucks, which is weird because it's honestly like the nunchucks is what at the end of the movie. Sorry, spoilers if you haven't seen this movie.
Yes.
At the end of the movie, the nunchuck is what like hangs on the on the ladder,
in the ladder,
and what he's able to Splinter whips it around on his Splinter's Shredder's staff and flips him over the edge of the wall.
Right.
So it's like I don't know how you really tell that story without the nunchucks, but yeah, they did it.
Oh man, so yeah. Before we get into more of the particulars, what were some of the kind of takeaways that you've gleaned this getting ready for today, kind of in this last viewing or two?
I think I usually like jokingly say like I learned 3 things at AFR: story, and so I was like trying to like okay, like what like as a storyteller, what is the story here? And I think it's really like it's maybe less so a traditional story than it is just about like relationships between parents, specifically fathers, and their children. Like you have with April, like her whole thing is like, I'll keep this store open just as a memory of my dad. So like her dad's just out of the picture, gone. Then you have like
it was also the house that they go to.
The house, it's like the family house, yeah. And she like keeps it up, but not really keeps it up.
Yeah, and not good enough.
Not nearly at all.
Put some money into that.
But and then you have the Turtles that have Splinter as their father figure, and he gets kidnapped, and he's out there. You have Danny and his relationship with his dad. This is like it's basically like and also Shredder and Tatsu and their like sort of parental like their father relationship with the rest of the Foot Clan. So it's like I really think it's sort of examining like every possible relationship that you can have with like a father figure, and so just kind of going through and just inspecting that and like, okay, what does it look like to have like a father that cares about you? Like how do the children react to that? A father that like maybe cares, but in a weird way that's not completely understandable. Like with Danny and his dad is like, he wants his kid to do well, but the kid's screwing off and like getting in trouble. I don't know what's going on with Casey Jones and his dad, but there's got to be some story there.
Yeah,
but I
would like more.
Yes, I would love more.
And I love this. Yeah, and the familial bond. I mean, so they're a family, and Splinter's their father.
Yep.
And Splinter's relationship with Hiroko Saki, and that whole rivalry there. And
Hamato Yoshi.
Yeah, and Yoshi was their teacher originally. I mimicked my master's moves from my cage. That was great. Yeah, I love all this. And we saw it in 2002 at the Cosford.
Oh, really?
It was fall in 2002, and they put it in the theater. And I remember going with Dan Siriano. Shout out to Dan Siriano, who's a massive Turtles fan, and also just really into 80s and 90s nostalgia. And he said that the 90s started when the Berlin Wall fell in 91. So the 80s actually don't end in 90; they end in 91. And
oh, really?
That's his timeline. So
that's a citation needed on that, buddy boy. I can see that. I can totally see that, though.
But I remember there's the part where he's like, "This is your family." Shredder's like, "This is your family," and I
am your father. Yeah,
and getting a massive laugh, and I was like, "Why is he laughing at that?" Because it's so Darth Vader-y.
Sure, yeah.
And even the helmet of, and I think they're both emulated off like the Japanese, helmets, war helmets, and the samurai helmets back in the day. And Darth Vader is Dark Father, and I think Shredder was heavily influenced by Darth Vader. The mangled face.
I can see that totally.
He's breathing fine without a mechanical apparatus, but he's a little beat up. And I love that it was Splinter that that scarred him and fucked up his face. And then so he's like cast out and he creates his own family. And I'm sure Master Tatsu was beaten by his dad or something, or something going on there. I
assume, yeah.
Yeah, because he needed a new father figure. So yeah, definitely all those sub themes. It's funny. What I gleaned was actually a lot less meaty, but what I really noticed this time is similarities with Ghostbusters. Oh yeah,
there's a couple of points in the score where I'm like, is that from Ghostbusters?
And they literally say like, who are you gonna call at one point? And then it's New York and the stuff with the mayor. And it's like this outcast group of 4 dudes, with one girl, Janine, April, and I'm sure that was swirling around in the subconscious of Eastman and Laird, Kevin Eastman and
Peter Laird.
Peter Laird, thank you. Which we could talk about more of than Playmates found them. But yeah, I'm sure that was swirling around in their subconscious. That movie coming out in '84, and I don't think it's a copy of Ghostbusters or anything.
No,
but
no,
it's
no.
like, who are you going to call? There's these guys, and, you know, they seem like losers at first, but then it turns out you really need them.
Right,
And
yeah.
they're going to save the day from these extraneous kind of more or less supernatural. I mean, not supernatural in the Foot Clan and Shredder, but something mystical and old school about it. You know, an archaic element. Something
From the past. It's so wild because, like,
So crazy.
in the comic book, they talk about. Laird and Eastman talk about like the Foot Clan supposedly like came out of like feudal Japan.
Right.
And then, like, cut to this movie, and you have the police chief talking about, like, why am I supposed to take this thing seriously? That's something reminiscent of something that happened years ago in Japan. But it's like, it's not that long ago. It's not feudal Japan because it's the same guy. It's Oroku Saki is the same guy that's doing it now.
Right.
So it's just, it was one of those, like, weird things. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
But, like, I don't
Don't
know.
tell me how to do magic. I love it.
Oh, man.
And the mayor's, he's very...
That's the chief of police.
Chief of police, yes.
Yeah.
He's super intense.
Oh.
I mean, he's got a lot on his plate. Poor guy.
That's right. As far as we know, he is handling just this one case.
That's big enough. Wait, so didn't you say that the Foot was, like the actual name, the Foot was... So it all stemmed through comics.
Yes.
Yeah, you tell it.
Yeah,
You
so-
said this on the phone.
I mean, yeah, I was just, one of the lore things is Laird and Eastman were like big fans of Jack Kirby and Marvel Comics, and Daredevil in particular was one of the ones they liked, and the antagonistic organized crime group in Daredevil is called the Hand. And so they like came up with the Foot as sort of like a tongue-in-cheek kind of like nod to that. It was like the whole conceit of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles like stemmed from a joke. Like one of them was trying to make the other one laugh, and so he like drew this like this turtle with this really droopy nose and like kind of like sagged over and like gave him like ninja weapons, and like that made him laugh. And so then the other guy drew something very similar, and then they passed it back and forth. They ended up with 4 of them, and that became it started out as the Ninja Turtles. And then the other guy added the Teenage Mutant, and they were the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And I don't know. That was kind of it. That's this sort of the origin of the entire thing stems from just these 2 guys who are working together, not able to really like, they're working other jobs. They're trying to make ends meet, and then this is what they do as their hobby. And then all of a sudden it's just like this idea, and it's just like. It made them laugh, and they thought it was good, and they just built a whole comic out of it. And
they were handing the notes through the window.
Yeah, exactly.
In between the 2 rooms, which they show in the Toys That Made Us. Yeah, it's a great episode, and I thought it was going to be more about just the toy element of it, but it ended up being really a history of the franchise itself.
Yeah. And that's just because the toys were so integral to the progression of the Turtles. I mean, it started out as this gritty comic, and this guy, Mark Friedman, who's again in this Netflix documentary, it's like this is something really like you got a thing here, and licensed it and like sold it to toy makers, and then the toys were great, and they spawned.
Playmates.
Yeah, actually, it was
Because they went to Mattel.
They did go to Mattel.
Speaking of, Barbie's the hit movie right now. And honestly, I found myself thinking about Barbie here because it's like, I didn't even think about it, but this was 33 years before Barbie even came out, which was a much older toy.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
And we're going to see IP created. Obviously, there was a comic and
sure,
whatnot, but they strayed from that most. I mean, more or less, there was some similarities, but this was its own iteration, but of a thing that was basically a toy.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I don't know. There's so many. It's so fun to watch these documentaries, and they're like, "This is the dumbest shit I ever heard in my life." And then it's like, I got a check for $1 million.
Yeah.
Here I am. I was like working as a whatever janitor 2 weeks before, and then somebody hands me a check for $1 million.
Yeah,
it's just crazy. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. They got Kevin Smith in there.
Yeah,
and he's like, "Yeah, it's ridiculous," and it's like 4 words together, but there was something about it.
Yeah,
and the image of seeing a turtle. I guess it was a lobster originally. It was
the
first iteration of it or something like that. Sort of a seaside town.
Because somebody worked with like at either I don't know if it was like a lobster harvester or like a lobster restaurant or something, but he worked with lobsters. Yeah, he hated them because they're bottom feeders. They just eat whatever floats to whatever sinks to the bottom of the water. That's what they eat. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I think that kind of sums it up pretty well. It's sort of like Kevin Smith saying, I know these 4 words. I've never seen them together in this order, but it's somehow like it just piques your interest and you want to know what is this thing? What is it? And then, once you for especially probably for like adolescent boys, like once you dive in, that's it. You're hooked.
You're hooked. You got something for everybody in there. No, it's great. And they're really a cool gang. And the orphan element that they live in the sewer and that they're outcasts and they've been ostracized. And the new movie does a really good job too, where Splinter's like, you can't go out there, like nothing good will come out there. They'll just try to murder you, because he went out there one time and almost got murdered, and that was it. And then he was like, we're never gonna leave. And that's the rule. And that element's here, but they do go out. Splinter's a little more lax with that. You can leave grounds. But don't stay out too long. Gotta wear the disguise.
Right.
The Raphael with the Critters poster is like my favorite part of the movie, I think. Where do they come up with this stuff?
Which is funny, because this movie is 1990, right?
Right.
Which means they shot in 89, yes?
Yeah.
Critters came out in 1986. Why is that? Why is Critters still in theaters in Manhattan 3 years later?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I mean, in LA, they play old stuff all the time, but you're not going to see a giant billboard for it.
No, it's not going to be on the marquee.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't think of that. Then again,
they come up with this stuff. Yeah, it's great.
Then again, there's so many things that are like, you have to suspend your disbelief. Like, I sent that clip. I film myself watching movies all the time on the projector, and I post them online, send them to people. Send it to my brother, and he's like, I love how they didn't notice him at all. Like, because he has the hat on and the trench coat. Like, but it's like with Superman, Clark Kent. Like, oh, the glasses. I had no idea it was him.
Yeah,
he looks kind of like Superman with glasses. People have no idea. It's just whatever. It works. It fits.
We're all Will Ferrell in. It's the same look. I feel like I'm taking crazy pills.
Yeah. Oh my god.
Zoolander. That was the movie.
That Hansel's so hot right now. I need to rewatch Zoolander. Actually, it's been a while. I never saw 2. But...
I don't know if I saw 2 either.
Well, yeah. I mean, Kevin Eastman and what was it?
Peter Laird and Kevin Eastman.
Peter Laird, Kevin Eastman. It's like the American dream, 2 guys, and they literally created they're called Mirage Studios, which was just their living room.
Right.
And they just, like you said, they just started drawing. And then, they find Friedman, let's build a franchise. And then they reached out to like Mattel, and they reached out to and they're like, no, this is never going to work. It's never going to work. And then I guess they sent they put together a little bit of funds to create like the prototype Ninja Turtle. It wasn't even one of the original 4 yet. It was just like a turtle. And they sent it in a box to the then head of Playmates. And he didn't open it apparently for a while because there was like so much going on. And the guy's like, open the box, just look in. And then, but he opened it and then he said, yeah, there's something here. And I think because he said that, he was like, all right, team, let's take a peek at that. And it got the ball rolling. Because apparently there were so many failures in that genre. And Playmates had made a toy. I forget what the name of it. It was some doll, right? Where there was like buttons in the back of it.
The girl talking?
Yeah. What was the name of that thing?
I don't remember. Lucy, maybe?
Yeah, something like that. Shoot. Anyway.
They made that, and it was like... that one was like pretty successful. And then they made another one that was more complicated, and that
They're
one...
like, oh, well, the main one was selling for $100,
yeah,
which is crazy.
Right.
That was like late 80s.
Right.
Which was like $1,000.
Right.
And then they're like, let's make a more expensive one that's even heavier and bigger and weirder and can do more things, and it completely bombed. So they were like they were like, all right, well, we're on thin ice right now. But
Stacy, I think it was Stacy.
Stacy.
Yeah.
Is that right?
I think so.
Yeah, that sounds right. I never even heard of that one.
No, I hadn't heard of it either.
I don't know anybody that had it or anything. I didn't recognize it. But yeah, it's pretty fancy. It had like controls in the back. You hit a button, talk.
Yeah, it was like a Teddy Ruxpin, but it was like a little girl.
Yeah, and then Friedman's like, let's go farther. Let's make an action feature. Oh no, that was the show.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm jumping ahead.
Before they ever made any of the action figures, they said we need to like introduce this to a broad audience, and so they they created the animated TV show to sell a toy line. It's
crazy. It works.
It's crazy.
Well, and it's genius because then it builds all the lore. And then I remember as a kid, I'd be like, oh yeah, that guy. I remember I saw that episode with the crocodile guy, and now I want that guy, and now I want that guy, and and there's the lore built into the show. It's genius. But what really hit me was when they went to go make the movie, and they were like, no, this doesn't work. There was Howard the Duck, and there was they're trying to do live action cartoon comic like transfers. Obviously, now we're living in the age of the Marvel explosion. And,
Yeah.
and we're at the tail end of that right now. But they were like, oh, I don't know, and then they wanted to go darker and grittier, like we said, and they're like, oh, well, that's different than the show. But then, I knew this movie was a hit because they made more, and I knew it was a hit, but I didn't know it was an independent.
Yeah, I didn't know that either.
So it was the biggest independent movie for a while. It cost $13.5 million in '89.
So there's a director's commentary where he says it was $7 million. So I think the extra 6.5 was probably just in P&A, prints and advertising.
Like total.
Yeah, I think the production budget was $7. Yeah, and he said most of that went to the Turtles.
Went to the suits.
And I don't know, but I mean, that's at least a couple million just to Jim Henson, just to manufacture all the puppeteering, like all that. That had to be a huge budget suck for them.
Yeah, that must have been. I mean, you're not looking at a lot of like big names or anything. Corey Feldman was the voice of Donatello. He was in Goonies and stuff.
Which
like that.
I wonder, he may have never even been on set.
Yeah, I don't think he was.
Only one turtle was voiced and like acted, like puppeteered.
Oh,
Raphael was Josh
the guy in the
Pais.
suit did the voice.
The guy in the suit did the voice. The rest of them, it was a different person.
Man, I wonder if those guys were bitter at all. They're like, you didn't have to be in those miserable suits for
right,
months and all that. I mean, it sounded like it was really tough, really, really tough. But it paid off I think that's why it, like you said, it holds up in the test of time. But yeah. $200 million worldwide.
That's crazy.
On a $13 million budget.
It's crazy.
I mean, to put things into perspective, the biggest movie the following year was, I believe in 1990, I just saw Total Recall again, which came out in 90.
Mm-hmm.
That was a $65 million movie.
Okay.
Which at the time was, that's pretty much as big as it got.
Yeah.
Until 91 when Cameron did Terminator 2.
Was that $100 million?
At $100 million.
Okay.
And then that ended up doing like 5-something worldwide. But that's at $100 million budget.
Yeah.
This is at a $13 million budget.
Right.
So if you look at like overhead versus profit, it's huge.
Mm-hmm.
It's insane. That's crazy. I didn't even look at like Secret of the Use numbers or anything.
It wasn't as big, but I mean, like there was some note somewhere that said the 3 movies did over $300 million worldwide. Most of it was in the first movie. I mean, yeah, I guess 2/3 of it was in the first movie.
Right. I'm sure the second one probably cost more. They went bigger. And
yeah, I'm 25 sticks in my head for some reason. Then I feel like it wasn't a failure, but it like only grossed maybe 62, something like that. Like it was,
diminishing returns a little.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then I don't think they put as much into the third one.
Yeah, and then the Toys doc talks about how that then fed into the sales of the toy exploding. Yep. And he was like, the demand was so high that they were creating a new character every month to meet the demand. And it was like insane. And that went all the way up until about 95, 96. And then they were like, okay, it's starting to dry up a little bit. And that's when they tried to do the reboot with Saban. Which, yeah, and I didn't know about any of this. They were tried to do a live action series like Power Rangers.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, I thought of Saban back in the day it was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers.
Yeah.
Teenage Tattooed Alien Fighters from Beverly Hills. Big Bad Beetleborgs. Virtual Reality Fighters or whatever. VR Troopers. Virtual Reality Troopers.
Big Bad Beetleborgs.
Superhuman Samurai Cyber Squad.
Oh, jeez.
So I feel like Turtles created the 4 words in a row.
Yeah.
This, then the noun. Like 3 adjectives or whatever.
Right.
And Saban took that, and then it's funny because, art imitating art now. They're like, well, Saban did a show about Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Yeah. They were teenagers that were also outcasts.
Right.
And, then they formed together. And then they had Zordon instead of Splinter, and he was a guy in a tube. And apparently that guy never got any money, and that's like, talking about the strike and everything.
Oh, wow. That's too bad.
He got paid like a day rate, and they used that.
That's because he was in a part of the Japanese crew.
Something like that.
Yeah, because they all the martial arts stuff was shot overseas.
Right.
I don't know if it's specifically Japan, but it was shot overseas, and then they basically just trucked in all that footage, and then they would have the American cast would do voiceovers. Whatever's like, oh, it got me, like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I remember watching that. It's probably the first thing that I ever hate watched was Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Like I knew as a kid, like this show is bad.
Yeah.
But somehow I was like, I can't stop watching it.
I know. I knew it was cheesy too. Like you see the zippers on the guys.
Yeah.
The putties, the bad guys.
Oh, jeez.
I had one friend, Mark Gleason, shout out. I think you met him. He came to Miami.
Yeah.
I think when you were living there.
Yeah, the name sounds familiar.
Yeah, he was obsessed. And we got into like we've been into Star Trek for a long time, and he's a massive Trekkie like me, and we still talk about Star Trek, but he still has like a twinkle in his eye when we talk about Power Rangers. And he got obsessed with like Amy Jo Johnson and all the Pink Rangers. I forget whoever was the next Pink Ranger after her, but whoever took the mantle.
Oh boy.
But yeah, anyway, he was like doing web design in the late 90s. And he was like the web design guy at our middle school. And he made a page to Jennifer Connelly and Amy Jo Johnson. And he basically used all of his computer skills to like make fan pages for his favorite girl crushes in movies and TV. Good use of your talent, honestly. Mark, you're the man.
Yeah.
After listening to this, thank you. And we love you. But yeah, I remember years later even, and he's like, oh, I got the, I almost called it Turtles. I got the Power Rangers movie on tape.
Oh, no.
With speaking of Ooze, Ivan Ooze was the villain. I'm Ivan Ooze.
Oh, jeez.
And he had a secret too, you know.
Yeah, he did.
So anyway, to get back to Turtles, but yeah, and I guess that didn't go very well.
The live action Turtle. I don't remember this at all.
Go well.
When I saw the clips of it, I was like, oh, this looks bad.
Yeah, this is yeah. Well, you know, it's one of those things where the bar was so high from the movies. You know,
it really was.
You know? And it looks so good. And like I said, when I was a kid, I'm not like, oh, the creature effects are amazing. But it is that Jim Henson. And apparently, Jim died in 1990 at 53, which is, you know, obviously very sad and sudden. And the world was very caught off guard. But he did get to see it before he didn't get to see it hit theaters. He had passed away. But he got to see like a cut of it. And apparently he was really, really happy with it. So I like that. You know, obviously he's already seen his empire flourish.
Of course.
All that, but,
this was one of the last movies that he did. And somebody, maybe it was Brian, was saying, you know, this was the most complicated, like puppeteering, animatronic, all that they'd ever done. So it's kind of, you can at least hang your hat that like he pushed the boundaries his entire career up until the very end.
Yeah, literally to the very end.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in that documentary that you sent on YouTube, the 15-minute one with the 30th anniversary retrospective over COVID when the actors were all zooming together, they talked about how one of them walked into the creature shop's guy's like office, and there was like Falcor's head was right there.
Oh yeah.
In a Neverending Story. And and Falcor's face is crazy with like the lips and the eyes. I just rewatched that movie. That movie's trippy as hell.
Yeah.
It's so good. It played at the Cemetery, Hollywood Forever.
Oh, nice.
My favorite movie theater in town, a Cemetery. It's always really funny. But yeah, I mean, I didn't get to go, so I ended up watching that one and the second one, which I hadn't seen in years. But there is just something visceral about the puppets, and it lasts. Like, you can always be like, oh, the computer generated effects don't hold up. But if it's real, it's practical.
Yeah.
It won't age. It holds up. I mean, sometimes you can totally see like the green screen where Falcor's flying.
Sure, yeah, of course.
It's like,
but I mean,
Bastion's waving his hands around in front of the green screen. But it still looks better to me than going all computer.
Terminator 2, like rear projection, that stuff looks good. So like good. all these old technologies that like somehow we keep trying to replace with newer and better. And they're newer, but they're not necessarily better.
Right.
And I think, people that lean into I think there are folks that are just like vehemently against CGI. And I think that's also wrong as well. I think that like there's certain things you can do only with practical effects. But like if you are this is what Jurassic Park basically does. Like use the practical effects as a base, and then whatever you can't do because of money restrictions or it's just not going to look right with puppets and animatronics, then augment that stuff with CGI. I think that's sort of the answer. Very sparingly. Do the CGI very, very sparingly. But also the other thing that people don't necessarily think about is like, if you don't have those practical effects that are interacting with your actor, it makes it much more difficult for the actor to deliver a realistic performance.
Right. They're just acting in front of a ping pong ball.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, it's so, I think that there is probably a balance to be struck there, but it definitely we've strayed too far from practical effects, in my opinion.
And I think we are seeing a healthy return even in TV, and just wrapped up season 2 of Strange New Worlds, Star Trek Strange New Worlds, and there was an episode where they do the Gorn, which is actually the classic like Kirk fighting the Gorn at Vascular Rocks.
Yeah, sure.
It's a guy in a suit, and the slow punches like. But now the Gorn are super fast. They did, in season 1, it was basically Alien. The hatchlings Gorns, the hatchling Gorns are like xenomorphs.
Interesting.
And they're running around and they can like burrow and then as they get older, they get less xenomorphy, but they're still pretty xenomorphy. And in the episode, I'm like, that looked really good. And I thought of Jurassic Park and I thought of Aliens and then I watched the making of. It's called The Ready Room with Will Wheaton. It's a really cool like making of show of Trek. But they talked about how Stan Winston Studios made these. And
right.
it was Stan's company. Mm-hmm. And, he did Alien and Terminator and even helped Rob Bottin on The Thing.
Yep.
So I think we're seeing a healthy mix. And even like Ash vs. Evil Dead, by season 3, it was a lot practical. Or season 1, maybe not as much.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it was a money thing. But
sure, it could have been, yeah.
But yeah, there was this era, and call it like 2009 to like 5 or 6 years ago, where it just seemed like everything was computer generated.
Yeah.
And a lot of those movies now are so hard to watch. They just don't age well.
Of course. I mean,
tough.
Yeah, and there, and even in the late 90s, there were people that like leaned really heavily into CGI like way too early.
Right.
And there's movies that came out in '98 that look, that look worse. They look worse than Jurassic Park, which was
which was early '90s. So, and that movie, the CG really still holds up. And and like you said, I think it's because they know when to use what tool. Mm-hmm. And apparently I watched the making of that movie, Happy 30 JP, and that movie still looks so good. It's amazing. Like the mosquito in amber, it's preserved perfectly. And
hello, John.
Hello, John. Hello, John. Bingo. Dino DNA. But yeah, just knowing when to use the puppet versus that. And apparently they were going to go with that stop motion style. And they showed the screen test of it.
Yeah.
And it looks so bad. And you're like, oh my God, they almost did this. They almost did it. And then they're like, wait, we can do this. And ILM like made the breakthrough like just then. It was one of those things where, it just wasn't there yet. But it like just came through. And then once that, and then JP, Pandora's box with that.
Right.
But yeah, knowing when to do which thing. And,
but I mean, with Turtles, like there was no CGI. They couldn't do it. No, it had to be practical.
Yeah. They didn't have it. No, and I remember I just listened to R.I.P. William Friedkin. He just passed away. Mm-hmm. Titan of the industry.
Oh yeah.
He was 87, but still hurt. But anyway, we love you, Bill.
We won't have him to take down young, arrogant directors anymore.
I know, exactly. I know. He spoke his mind, that guy.
He absolutely did.
Whether you love him or hate him, he spoke his mind. Seriously. But yeah, I just watched The Exorcist again, which I still think is his best movie. And then, and it's just such a scary movie. It's really, really good. But he talked about refrigerating the set to get the cold breath. Mm-hmm. And he's like, no, they could do it with computers and it'd be fine. But I'm like, you know what? I still feel like it just looks real when it's real.
Yep.
And if you can refrigerate the set, sure, that's tough.
Yeah.
But like, there's so many times where they do the breath effect, and you're like, they're not really cold. They're not really cold.
No.
Sure, they're acting cold, but they're not cold.
Yeah. And just like they turn the head, and like it doesn't. It's always imperfect, and it's like those little details, right. The things that like
your eye catches.
Your eye's gonna catch them, and it's stuff that like you're either not gonna pay for to somebody on post to do it that detailed. Or they're not going to care enough about the final product to put in the time necessary to make sure that that's what
so it slips through the cracks.
Exactly, it just slips through the cracks.
Yeah,
and it's like if you just figured out a way to do it in camera, it would be fine.
Yeah,
because it would be there.
Man, I mean, the suits. I mean, yeah, they were a nightmare to wear, but it's just this. Guys, your sacrifice was done in vain. Like it looks so good.
Yes,
and watching it now, I'm just like, man, the skin and the spongy nature, like all the heads, even. And
it's porous. There's like little like not pimples, but like little like I guess where where you would see like hairs growing, but they're reptiles. They don't have that. But it's just like I don't know. It was very good. It was very well done, and just like I can't imagine. Unless you're going to animate the whole thing, I can't imagine going another direction. Like the Michael Bay, the new ones, like they're fun, but it's totally different. It's
haven't seen any of
those. It doesn't have the same.
Yeah.
There's I don't know. Maybe it's just a nostalgia factor. It certainly doesn't have the nostalgia of my life that is reminiscent of my life.
Right. No, for sure. Yeah, and I honestly I wasn't even going to check out this new one, but buddy of mine was just. Tony Guzman, Antonio, shout out. He was just struck. And he was going back for third helpings. And he sees everything. He rarely goes again. Yeah. Unless it's like, let's go see Total Recall at the New Beverly. And I've seen this movie before. But seeing something in its theatrical run more than one time, rarely. And he was like, "Oh my god, the music, the visuals," and yeah, not to get off topic of the 1990 one, but I really liked the new one, and it had a really cool look to it, where it was somewhere between like Kubo and the Two Strings, where it kind of looked like a stop motion-y, but also the Spider-Verse, where it was comic. And I did see it in 3D, and I think that really served the kind of diorama look and layering of it really, really well. But the story was there. Nice. And it was enough of a retelling of hitting, obviously there's Splinter, he cares about them, there's the group, there's the gang, but it's enough different. You don't have Shredder, you get this guy called Superfly, and he's a mutant. Oh. So he's another like outcast mutant, but now...
It's not Baxter Stockman?
It's not Baxter.
Interesting.
No.
Okay.
I thought of that. No, he's voiced by Ice Cube, and he's like, he's just kind of a gangster, but at first he seems really cool, but then he's like, all right, anyone that opposes me will die, So he's kind of like a Hitler, where he's outcast, but then he decides to create an army. And
interesting.
Anyway, it was really, really, really well done, because at first you're like, oh yeah, he's one of us, he's a mutant, he's cool, he's different, but then obviously the lengths that he goes and the decision that he makes to want to kill everybody, it goes too far.
That's too bad.
But then he like forces their hand into helping him, and he intimidates them. Anyway, not to give too much away, but there's enough differences, but then enough of the classic moments, like you said, the family connection, the familial bonds.
Yeah,
you have a younger April O'Neil, who's still in high school, and she wants to be a reporter, and she's like a reporter in a school, but she has stage fright and she vomits when she's on camera.
Nice.
She becomes Puke Girl, because there was like a famous TikTok where they remix her. Anyway,
that's a good touch. I like that.
Yeah, and the score by Atticus Ross and Trent Reznor. Yeah, those two guys are killing it. It's really, really, really well put together. And it was only like 95 minutes. Super lean. Get in, get out. It was over before I was like, oh, it's done. It moves so quick. But anyway, going back and rewatching this one, there's no replacement for the practical. No, there's just nothing. There's nothing. It's really real. And you can tell. I remember, I was like, for years, I was like, oh, is it like a stop motion element with the mouths? But how does that work with all the servos and stuff, which we just learned from this documentary? I mean, it's crazy. Yeah. It's wild.
It's really crazy.
It's wild.
And, I think they shot it in 7 weeks, 8 weeks.
Yeah, pretty quick.
Something like that.
Super quick.
Which, I mean, having done like practical effects stuff, and like I've never done like martial arts, but like I can't imagine like the time it would take, especially with guys in suits. Like, how many shots can you actually get off in a day? Is it like you can do like 12 shots before like they're just totally spent and you got to move on to something else? Like, do you have to have like Judith Hogue and Elias Koteas every day so you can do like the morning with the turtles and then the afternoon with the live action people? Like, I don't. Kevin Clash was the only one that was like with Splinter doing like traditional puppeteering where he's not in a suit, right? But he's like
off camera with the joysticks.
He also was puppeteering and voicing. That was the only other than Raffaello. Other than Raphael, he was the only other one that was puppeteered and voiced by the same person.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where you want to be like, I was the guy in the suit, though.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like you go to the premiere and they're like yelling it out. Like, I was in that.
Which I think is why, so like, a couple of little Easter eggs, like the guy who's in the Michelangelo suit, you see at the beginning delivering the pizza to Michelangelo. Like that's him. He's like, oh, come on, I couldn't find the place. And then
I gotta get a new route.
Yeah, I thought we delivered everywhere. 122? Was it
122 and an 8?
22 and an 8. Great. And then the guy who's in the Raphael suit is actually in the cab. He's the passenger in the cab when Raphael rolls over it.
Okay.
What the heck was that? Look like sort of a big turtle in a trench coat. You going to LaGuardia, right? So he's the guy in the back of the cab. Oh, dude, that's good. And then the other guys get cameos, but I don't remember where they are. The guy that's in Donatello's suit and the guy that's in Leonardo's suit. I think they're just like henchmen, like footmen, foot soldiers. That's the word.
Yeah, footmen.
Footmen.
Foot people. Yeah. Foot soldiers.
Foot folk.
Yeah, they're great, and. They're really with the googly eyes and everything, but But yeah, I mean, can we talk about that arcade layer underground where they
yeah.
go down there and just skateboarding and arcade games and pool and money and roulette and
first of all, to get to hang out with a young Sam Rockwell, I mean, how can you pass
oh my
that
God,
up?
yes, we almost did. Yes, Sam Rockwell, man. Look at him in that.
Gold chains, dirty white T-shirt.
Yeah.
Passing out cigarettes to everyone who asks. No, it's an amazing... Like, that video game, Narc, that's a real game, right? Like, you could play that game?
Yeah, I looked that up.
I want to play that game.
Yeah.
It's not like the game in Hackers that doesn't exist.
Yeah, what was the name of that one?
Oh, I can't remember.
That was almost Rich's pick as a Hackers fan.
We'll do it. We'll do it.
Yeah. I watched it over the pandemic, and like I said, I watched it 2 days in a row.
Yeah.
And it wasn't because I had to.
Right.
And I didn't even do a podcast on it.
Right.
I was like, no, I want to go again.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think Strat came up, and I was like, all right, I'll watch it again.
That one was based off of like F-Zero, I think is what it was. It was based on that, but it's not. That's not what it was.
Yeah, like a futuristic racer.
Yeah, it was like a hovercraft racing. Yeah. But yeah, so Narc. I think they had pinball. There was like a skateboard track for some reason, which I'd never seen before or since. Like,
yeah, right. What happened to that? 1988 run and gun arcade game designed by Eugenia Jarvis for Williams Electronics and programs by George. Yeah, it really existed. Yeah,
Narc.
Yeah.
I feel like I remember seeing it. I just don't ever remember like. So in the movie when they're playing it, it's like a skeleton head on some like vertebrates inside of a car.
Yeah,
and it's like floating around, and like I just don't ever remember seeing that live. But I do remember seeing the cabinet, probably at the skating rink. Shout out to Spinning Wheels in Festus, Missouri.
Oh yeah, that's where you went.
Yeah, that was the that was the place. That was the place. That was it.
Wheels, good name.
Spinning Wheels.
Festus.
Yeah. Spinning Wheels in Festus.
Right, Rich King is from Festus. How close to another major city is that?
It's like 30 miles south of St. Louis, and other large cities it would be considered a suburb, but St. Louis is small enough that it's not. We're still at best we're an exurb. No public transit, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, anyway, to get back to Narc, it one of the first ultra-violent video games as a frequent target of parental criticism.
Ooh.
Of the video game industry. The object is to arrest and kill drug offenders, confiscate their money and drugs, and defeat Mr. Big. It was the first game in the newly restarted Williams Electronics coin-op video game division. Shortly before its release, Williams acquired the video and pinball divisions of Bally and Midway.
I know Bally and Midway, yeah.
So it's kind of ironic that, you're depicting a layer where these criminals are gathering.
Yeah.
And then this game and they're playing a game about, stopping drug dealers and offenders. But
so the Mr. Big, is that a Sex and the City tie-in, or is Sex and the City one of Carrie's boyfriends? They call him Mr. Big.
Mr. Big.
Yeah.
Oh man, I mean, yeah, I love this movie. It's so good.
It's a good movie.
It's 90 minutes long.
Yes, the VHS box says approximately 95 minutes. It's like,
it says that.
Yeah, we just put the runtime. Why do you have to put approximately 95?
So that VHS you've had since then.
That is my original OG, like probably from Christmas 1990 VHS.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did the sisters like it as well?
Probably not.
Not as much as you.
I wouldn't think so. No.
Richie has 2 older sisters.
2 older. So yeah, Molly would have been 10 and Libby would have been 13. So probably not.
onto other things.
Yeah. Talking about boys.
Not necessarily Ninja Turtles.
Not
better boys.
Not those boys. Yes, other boys.
Human boys.
Human boys.
But also bipedal. I hope.
Oh, I love the so like, toward the beginning, like it's Raphael has this encounter with Casey.
Yeah.
He swings the bat, and he's like, a Jose Canseco bat. Tell me you didn't pay money for this. And then he hits him with the other one. He says it was a 2-for-1 deal. But like you look it up, and like Jose Canseco was like a very good baseball player. He was playing for the Oakland A's at the time. But like in '89 is when he started to get in trouble with the law. Was like arrested with like an automatic semi-automatic handgun. He did something in Florida.
Didn't know any of this.
Yeah. He was like, he was a little dicey on the like kind of sidestepping the law a little bit. Yeah. I don't know if they're referencing that in the movie.
Yeah, what do they mean by that?
I don't know what they mean by that. I mean, he played for the A's. They're in New York, so maybe it's like an American League Yankees Oakland A's thing. I don't know. I really don't know.
Meaning what though? Like they got the bat from.
I mean, I have to assume that it's something like you can't be a Jose Canseco fan. Like this is New York City.
I see.
I think that's what
city.
Yeah.
Okay.
The Oakland A's from Oakland, California.
Okay.
Formerly the
So
Philadelphia
He's
Athletics.
a traitor. Oh, is that right?
Yeah, but
Really?
years and years ago. Like,
Okay. Well, you know your sports.
no, I just know those things. That's it.
Because they're lines in a movie. That you
You're exactly right. Yes, I know them because they reference another thing that I'm very much a fan of.
Oh man, but the to get back to the Toys documentary, it was so sad how they kind of the original duo kind of like split up. I mean, they kind of hugged it out, but
yeah,
Laird ended up buying all Eastman's shares.
Yeah,
but then down the road there was like another big payout, and I guess Eastman didn't get anything.
Didn't get anything
because he sold his shares. But he wanted to like move on and do more with his life.
Yeah,
which I get. But then I'm also like, why does it have to be? I guess Turtles was like his morning, afternoon, and evening.
There was an age gap there as well, so like,
right.
I think Laird was like, "This is it. Like, I'm gonna ride this wave until And Eastman's a little bit younger. He's like, well, I can do this again. Like, lightning strikes twice, kind of thing. Yeah. Not necessarily in a cocky way, but just was like, I've done this.
More to see.
Yeah.
In the world.
But I mean, I don't know. It seems like they have gotten back together. I'd be curious to know why there's not like a decent, Blu-ray release with like deleted scenes and like storyboards, because like there's a German Blu-ray apparently has both the director's commentary on it, which is in English, and some deleted scenes and alternate ending, where like at the end of the movie apparently April and Danny like go and pitch it as a comic book to like a comic book exec, and the Turtles like come in from the corners of the window behind him, and then Michelangelo falls off. Like I don't know, like why can't we see that stuff?
All right, we gotta get that Blu-ray.
If only they were release it on Laserdisc, because then we would be fine.
Then you would definitely have it. Yeah. Rich's Laserdisc collection. How many you got now, by the way?
I haven't bought it in a while, but it's over 300.
300?
Yeah, it's a lot.
Wow.
Some multiples.
Where do you keep them all?
They're just in my apartment.
You have like shelves?
Yeah.
I still haven't seen your Long Beach place.
Yeah, well.
I don't think you don't really want me there.
I don't really like it.
Because there's laserdiscs everywhere. And
it's mostly
you can't get anywhere.
It's mostly laserdiscs.
Just like you go to the bathroom, you just step on laserdiscs.
Yeah. I would make pizza more often, but my oven is full of laserdiscs.
And all Turtles. They're all the copy of Turtles.
Yes. I have 300 copies of Turtles.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's great. I love that, man. They're so big.
Yeah.
And it's the quality of like a VHS, right?
Same quality as a VHS. Yeah.
Not
the audio.
I mean, it won't degrade like a VHS. But
there is a thing called laser rot. It's not super common.
Laser rot?
Yeah, it happens. Where like you get these streaks of like pixelation that'll just like come down.
Huh.
So it's very strange. It's not super common. I don't think that it's like contagious disc to disc.
Say it's contagious.
I don't think it is. It might be, but I don't think so.
It's not gangrene.
But yeah, so basically it is an analog picture and a digital sound. So it's sort of like digital. The audio quality can be very much akin to DVDs, but it's basically you're taking. It's like. So like I think it's CAV is like it's photographs. It is a series of photographs. So when you pause it, it stops on an image, and it's like that. It's that frame from the 35.
Got it.
Yeah, and there's another one that's long play, and that's like less quality. It's not a still image. It's more of like a video kind of format.
Okay.
But yeah,
it's not as many.
480 though, 480i. That's what it is.
480i.
Yeah.
480. Yeah. I love it. That's so Rich King of you to collect laserdiscs. Man, 300. I didn't realize you got that far.
Yeah.
Is there like a whole community of people online that are like collectors? Have you reached out?
There's the Laserdisc database, the LDDB .com. I have my collection posted there. Sir Richard King.
You keep it updated and everything?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I do. I just added one. Our friend Mateo got me one.
Oh, cool. Mateo Sarilla.
Yeah, so he was a DJ, and so he would always like ask me to go to record stores with him, and I was like, I don't have like a phonograph, like I don't do LPs. Then I started to realize, they have laserdiscs. Like a lot of people will take their laserdiscs to record stores, not knowing. Yeah, and so there's always
same size.
Yeah, it's exactly the same size, and like people think it's just like this is the soundtrack, and then you no, it's the movie. Why is there the silver disc in here?
Yeah, what is this thing?
So there's like always
every chromed out vinyl.
Yeah, so cool. every record store will have like a section in the corner that's like laserdiscs. They don't want them. They never ask for them, but they'll sell them to you, and they mostly don't. It's like $1, like I think the most I've ever paid for one was maybe $8. But it's just like, I don't know, they're cheap and it's just interesting. It's a little like weird. It's a weird little relic of a time gone by. Just like me.
Just like you, Rich. You're a forgotten gem. Rich King, this has been lovely. Any closing thoughts on Turtles before we wrap up here?
I don't know. If you haven't seen it, check it out. I don't know. I mean, if you haven't seen it by now, you probably aren't going to listen to me telling you to go see it. But like, it's a worthwhile movie. It's a gritty story about a family that is torn asunder by a. It's the everyday story of a family torn asunder by a man with spikes all over him and a thing on his face. Who runs a weird crime ring with a bunch of teenagers. We've seen it before, sure, but not quite done this well.
But also well. No, it is surprisingly deep, and it holds up in repeat viewings. Like I said, I hadn't seen it in a while, and it really, really holds up. It's really a good film, and there's a lot going on. And it's been a joy to talk about it with you today, sir.
Yes.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for taking the time. Rich King, everybody. God bless.